We'd like to welcome everybody to Advanced PortGen 2022. This event is being recorded. We will make this available on our YouTube channel. And everybody that's registered for the events will get an update on the resource links and the YouTube availability. And I don't know if we have anybody here from the Port of Seattle. Let me look.
We have an Emily.
Oh, Emily's here. Okay. So we'd like to hand this off to Emily Ho. She works with me and Rice, who's the Director of Diversity and Contracting for Advanced PortGen. So Emily, if you'd like to say a few words.
Thanks, Leslie. I just want to thank everybody for taking the time for being here. This is our very last Advanced PortGen official workshop. Next week, we have a networking session where a number of the presenters that you've seen at these workshops, both from agencies as well as technical assistance organizations, will be there. So we would love for you to be there and to be able to mix and mingle and network. We're going to have food that is sponsored by the Aerospace Futures Alliance from Miss Helen's Soul Bistro. So that's a nice little bonus. No presentation or anything, just pure networking. So we would love to see you there. I'm going to drop the link into the chat to RSVP, just so we can make sure we have the right head count. Other than that, I would just really like to thank Leslie from PTAC as well as Tiffany for all of their super hard work bringing this together, Andrew Miller as well as Aisha for their support as well, and also to all the presenters, including Danica, who's here today to talk about a design build procurement process with us. So I'm really excited for that. That's all from me. Thanks, Leslie.
All right, well, thank you. Well, now I'm going to introduce Andrew Miller. Andrew is with the USDOT Small Business Transportation Resource Center. And with that, we'll turn it over to Andrew and he'll kind of hit the highlights of what's going on today. And we'll be ready for our, oh, that's the wrong one, you guys. That's the agenda. Actually, Danica Mason will be here. And she'll be first up, and then later in the day we'll have the city of Tacoma and also the city of Seattle prepared to talk to you a little bit about the whole procurement process through those two cities. And the day will end up with Fernando Martinez, who is with the Northwest Mountain Minority Supplier group. Anyway, so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Andrew so that he can move you on to the next step.
The Northwest Mountain Minority Supplier Development Council.
Oh, that was cool. Sorry, Fernando.
As she said, I'm with Northwest SBTRC. The acronyms can be easier to remember, but Small Business Transportation Resource Center, in an event like this, there's a lot of transportation. And that's kind of why we're here. This is the very last of our online workshops. We're hoping that you'll get enough information from this course of events that you'll be interested in reaching out for DOT events. The infrastructure bill that just went online is dumping billions of dollars into every economy as much as they can, specifically DBEs, disabled business enterprises. Now, when it comes to whether or not you're qualified to do these things, that's not going to be a necessary takeaway from this event, but I'd like to check and see if you are. So after the event is over, just drop me a note. I will have my contact information in the chat as well as in the online access. And I'd like to give special thanks to guest Gary Clark, the Executive Director of Northwest SBTRC, who has joined us today. And then also thank you to Aisha Kadri for all her help in putting this together. So we'll go from here and move it on to Danica Mason of Red Team Go. Danica, it's all yours.
Thanks, Andrew. So I'm Danica with Red Team Go, and we are going to talk about design, build, delivery. So a little bit of background as to why you get me to talk about this is that I have been doing design, build, and other alternative delivery procurement work for the last almost 20 years, which dates back to the beginning of design build in Washington State. My company, Red Team Go, works with contractors, CM firms, engineers, and concessions around the world on design build, GCCM, CMDC, CMAR, P3, progressive design build, the whole gamut of what is alternative delivery. Washington State is very focused on design build, moving a little bit more toward progressive design build, and we have also seen a lot of GCCM over the last several years. So today we're talking about what is design build delivery and how do you get started, because it is different. So next, please.
Well,
Maybe.
we're trying. Okay.
All right. So I don't want to sit here and listen to myself for the next 50 minutes. None of you want to listen to me for the next 50 minutes. So I do want you to ask questions as we go. You know, if you've got experience working with design build or have other collaborative delivery method experience, you know, speak up, share your experience. What I know is different than what others know. You know, we are a DBE firm as well, so we understand, you know, some of those challenges as to getting into doing this type of work, and that's part of what we are focused on. Specifically, we do inclusion management in Washington State and Colorado, so this is part of what we focus on, is getting small businesses involved in our design build projects. Okay, next slide. All right, so first things first, why do owners choose design build? Design build is a collaboration between the contractors, the engineers, and the owners to get a project constructed, designed and constructed. It is faster than your traditional bid build delivery, which is why we use our analogy of our Corvette and our Honda, I think is what that is. Traditional bid build delivery, from the time that you start PAED until you are ready to release for bid, ranges anywhere from 4 to 8 years in getting the project out to bid. In design build, from PAED to getting a design builder under contract, it can be as fast as 18 months in our experience. So it does speed things up quite a bit. Okay, next slide. So why should you be interested in design build? Design build is a really great method of delivery that allows you to know what the owner's goals are up front during the project. It helps us meet those goals as a team. And it ends up being more collaborative for both the designers and the contractors. There's a lot of over the shoulder, there's a lot of working together to come up with that design. Certainly not designing on napkins, but same concept. We're working together to get those things figured out. Okay, next slide. All right, so what are the differences between a traditional bid build and a design build project? Next slide. All right, so our bid build projects, this is what we typically see. It's when we go from a PAED through our environmental clearance, full PS&E, getting our permitting, and then getting our contractors under contract and out in the field building a project. So with a traditional project, the design has to be 100% complete prior to the bid letting, which means it just takes time. It is awarded to the lowest responsible bidder. And we say that this is kind of our turtle method of delivery, because when compared to all of the alternative delivery methods, this is the slowest way of getting projects built. Okay, next slide. So design build is exactly that. It is where our designer and our contractor are a single team. The project is awarded to the contractor. It's very rare that the designer is a joint venture member. And that single entity is responsible for finalizing the design and then doing the construction. Design build is awarded generally to both the best value and responsive proposer. And what that means is that the proposal weighs into what the bid is. It's not just based on price. Okay. Next slide. I think we're going backward on me, Leslie. Okay. So with design build, you know, we've all heard you want to hire someone who is fast, cheap, and good at what they do. That doesn't really exist. Design build and other collaborative delivery methods are a way to help owners achieve exactly that in getting something delivered faster, cheaper, and better. So it's the ultimate enigma. Next slide. So you can see from this graphic that bid build is on the continuum, just a longer process than design build. You can see that in bid build, everything goes step by step by step. In design build, things overlap. Our preliminary design overlaps with our estimating a bid, and then our final design, our permitting, and our construction. So everything is very compressed and fast. So what that means is that, on average, we're seeing our design build projects, the final design from the time that the bid is accepted until we're 100% released for construction or issued for construction, is anywhere from 8 to 18 months, where getting to 100% PS&E can take several years in a traditional bid build project. Next slide. So benefits of design build. We keep talking about faster delivery. It also provides cost certainty to the owners. When you bid a design build, especially in Washington State, it is considered a lump sum bid. So it is not a T&M. This is, the cost that you come up with when you're at 25 or 30% design is the cost that you're supposed to deliver the design and construction for. It allows the designers and the contractors to do constructability reviews upfront. It means that that design that you're getting when you get into the field is actually something that can be constructed and not something that you have to go back and value engineer after you've been awarded a project. Partnering is a big piece of design build. On most design builds, we see facilitated partnering, and it's because it helps the projects just run smoother, better, and it gets us to that end goal of getting a project open to public use. Design build reduces the risk. So one of the things that you'll hear a lot on the contractor side is that design build allows owners to push risk to the contractors. But because the contractors and engineers are getting involved at the same time and together, it allows you to mitigate a lot of those risks up front. You can design your risk out as a team. You know what to watch for as you're going into the field. Design build also lets you have more opportunity for innovation. Working with both designers and contractors means that we can come up with better alternative concepts for how to do things. Different materials sometimes are able to be implemented because our contractors understand what can be done in the field and work with the designers to make that happen. Maintenance of traffic, there's a lot of innovation that happens with that. There's a lot of innovation that happens with balancing earthwork for projects that have earthwork. Okay, next slide. So the design builder selection is very similar to a bid build selection. So we go generally through a statement of qualifications, to a short list, to your proposal, which includes a bid, and it can be best value or low bid. Washington State typically is best value, and then a design builder is selected. So it's not all that different than your traditional SOQ to proposal, plus an interview. Design build typically doesn't have an interview, which is a good thing for most of us, since no one really likes going to interviews. Okay, next slide. So the general SOQ process is that we have to talk about several things that relate to the design builds. So our key personnel, the companies that are involved in their experience. What is your understanding of the project? How are you going to approach management and building the project from a high level? What is your approach to DBE, SBE, MSV, WBE? We can put any number of terms to it, but that is usually something that is asked about. Your approach to meeting the project goals, your safety information. Do you have an EMR that's under a 1? Do you have a safety program that meets the general industry standards? And then confirming that you can meet the bonding and insurance requirements. So this is what a typical SOQ looks like. This is not a WSDOT SOQ. WSDOT is absolutely different. The only things that WSDOT asks for are key personnel and firm experience. There's nothing about your understanding of approach, your DBE, your goals, your safety. They really want to know who they're going to be working with as far as people and firms. Okay, next slide. Okay, so once you are shortlisted on a design build, we go to a proposal phase. That proposal phase is a time that owners and the design builder actually sit down, you talk, you go through your ideas, your innovations. It allows that partnership between the design builder and the owner to start early. It's the time that you get to advance the design to a point where you're comfortable with it to be able to bid it. Your alternative technical concepts are developed, they're submitted and either approved, conditionally approved, or rejected as things that you can do on the project. Often alternative technical concepts or ATCs save money, schedule, increase safety, provide better quality and life cycle. There's any number of things that they can do, but that's what owners are typically looking for. You develop your design and construction approach for this particular project. You develop what your quality approach is on design build. Typically, the design builder owns the quality assurance. So hiring a third-party quality assurance firm is a big deal to design builders. All of your inspections and your materials tests and such go through the design builder, but through a third party rather than going through the owner. The owner does quality verification or validation. You develop your schedule for delivering the project, which becomes contractual, and then you develop your cost, which is generally a lump sum cost. Okay. So then after a project is awarded, you continue to move the design forward to release for construction. They're reviews by the owner. You get to that phase release for construction to get the contractors out in the field working. Subcontractor buyout continues. We typically don't do subcontractor buyout during the proposal phase, except for large packages that we want to make sure we know what the prices are, and then construction is occurring. Yes, Andrew.
Hi, there's a chat from Ron. He's asking, how does a building owner know what building components they will receive under this process? For example, is there a guideline or base specification of products for owners that have multiple buildings and want to coordinate uniform materials between all facilities or provide room for expansion or future uses?
So that's a great question, Ron. And what is what happens is that you still have to meet the typical standard specs. There are often other special provisions that come with that, but we have what are called bridging documents, and those are the documents that the owner provides to the design builder to explain what the goals of the project are, any specific things that they want to see integrated into the project. If they have a life cycle piece to a project, you know, we'll see owners, especially right now, we have DOTs that are asking for 100-year life on bridges. This is a whole new thing for those in the transportation world. 75-year life was the standard. Now we're going to 100-year. But there are, you know, you still have to follow the regulations, the state codes, whether it's WSDOT for their design and construction codes, whether it's your building specifications and codes, all of that still has to be met. And then, you know, if there is thought that, you know, an owner wants to have the same materials used through several buildings, they'll specify that. Sometimes we'll see owners actually procure their own materials and tell the design builder that they're going to use those materials. Does that answer your question, Ron?
Yes, it does. And I would actually like to piggyback on that just slightly. In the form of a design build, are you given a lot more leeway in these things? Like when Fairchild Air Force Base requisitions a hangar and somebody has to do an install on something like the bathroom or this or that, they're going to have a certain set of screws with a security type and a stainless steel set of numbers and specs that has to go into that particular thing. Is that generally left wide open, or is it the kind of thing where the design builder actually just gets a detail, like I'm seeing DOT has their own specific manual, like there's just a list of baseline guidelines, and then as long as you're within the area?
Yeah.
Or
So
can you just wing it?
with things like that, you'll often have it's a qualified product list, a QPL, that is basically your acceptable products that you can use. If you want to propose using something else, you have to then have all the backup information and research to show that it is equal or better to what is on that QPL. So, but there is specifically on the building side, there tends to be more leeway. On the transportation side, we don't have as much leeway. So. And Catherine, you are absolutely right. You have to provide substitution submittals to get different materials approved. Okay, so there is. Okay, so Nicole, you are saying, so what would be excellent is if there was an agency that facilitated all these various and challenging rules and regulations for business owners so that you can focus on providing great service and generating lots of money to feed the economy. All the various and highly consequential rules can be daunting to a prospective business owner. That is true, and it would be amazing if someone actually did that. The biggest thing is that, you know, all of the contracts are typically available from the owners as you're going through procurement. Generally, you know, if you're going after a WSDOT project, it is the WSDOT design and construction manuals, but then you'll have special provisions, which is typical of any bid build job as well. But right now, there is not a single entity that I know of that keeps track of all of the various regulations and rules around design build or other collaborative delivery that is provided to business owners, because every agency does things differently. So, okay, I'm gonna go to the next slide, Leslie. So one of the biggest differences is the speed of delivery. I cannot stress this enough. The fact that as a designer, your design that would normally take you 3 years now has to take you 8 months is a huge deal. Same thing with construction. You know, you have to go very quick into construction in order to meet the deadlines that are set. Okay, and then Mark, I see a question from you. Can you speak to the common delivery schedule you mentioned as now built into the contract? Absolutely. So when you bid a design build, 9 times out of 10, when we submit them, we actually submit a full baseline schedule with our design build. So that can be anywhere from probably the least number of lines I've seen is 100 up to, I had a project go in earlier this year that my schedule was 322 pages. So part of it is on the design builder to determine how much information they want to build into a schedule, because the date that you say you will finish the project on your schedule is the date that you have to meet before liquidated damages start coming into play. Owners will have other milestones within there, such as specific MOT shifts or getting specific pieces of projects open at certain times, design being RFC'd. So it's up to the design builder how much risk they want to take in building out their schedule. The majority of design builders that we work with want to build their schedules out so that they can turn around and submit it as their initial baseline schedule. And yes, 322 pages is absolutely insane, but it was for a $8 billion, 14-mile project with 30 something bridges. So 322 pages was expected, but it was big. All right, you want to go to the next slide? So as a small business, especially, preparing your firm is really important if you want to do design build. So research is one of your best friends. What you can do is follow who's getting design build contracts. What primes are going after these types of jobs? What ones are actually winning the jobs? Who are their designers? All of these, especially if it's public contracting, it's all public information. So that's going to be your first step, is knowing who's going after these jobs. Design build isn't something you wake up and say, hey, I really want to do this and I'm going to prime it tomorrow. Typically that doesn't work out very well, and we see businesses go out of business because they've done something like that. So knowing what projects are forecast to come out. WashDOT, Sound Transit, and other agencies all have really great look ahead schedules. So they tell you what the next 12, 18, 24 months of contracting is anticipated to be. And that allows you to then start thinking about, okay, who might be going after these jobs? What ones would I be interested in? And start talking to those primes. And then knowing where you bring value. Is it in a very specific set of skills that that project may need? Is it in being able to fill in and provide additional manpower? We see both on design builds. Okay, next. So understanding what design build is and how it's different than your typical projects is going to help you. You know, knowing what those risks are. Especially because you do have to bid your projects when you don't necessarily have 100% design. It does depend on when in the procurement process your company gets involved. There are instances, especially as design builds are already awarded, that we put out packages to the subcontracting community when we're at 100% design. And so you actually get the full design, which allows you to appropriately price your risk. You know, other risks though is knowing what the schedule requirements are, what the liquidated damages are associated with that. What are the expectations for your firm being on the project, you know, at what times? One of the things that you can do is take a class from Design Build Institute of America. They have hundreds of classes every year based on exactly this, teaching you about design build. You can get certified in design build as a design build professional or a design build associate. So it really depends on how much you want to put into knowing design build. So getting involved as a subcontractor or subconsultant, you need to know what value you bring. Don't come to a procurement team, a prime, an inclusion manager and say, well, my value is that I'm a minority business, a women-owned business. That's not a value. It's a benefit, but we need to know what you actually bring to the job. Build your relationships with the primes, both the design and the construction. Get your projects delivered on schedule and on budget. If you don't ever meet your schedule when you're working with the prime, they're not going to have the confidence that you can meet an extremely accelerated schedule. So it's really important that you do meet those schedules and budgets that are set when you work on traditional bid build projects. Target your marketing materials to what you're looking at. What type of packages can you bid on? What type of design can you do? So targeting your marketing materials, you know, if you do both water and electrical line installation, but you want to go talk to someone about electrical work, get rid of the water stuff. We don't care. All we care about is knowing that you can do the electrical work. You know, if you're going to bid packages, bid those that you know you can deliver. You know, and if they look like they're too big, often design builders will let you bid a partial package. We've had several of those in the last 3 years on the 405 Brent to Bellevue project, where we've allowed partial bids and awarded them. So next slide. Make sure you respond to any bid packages thoroughly. Know what's required. Ask questions if you don't understand it. Every prime should be ready to help you understand what's needed, but you have to be thorough. You have to provide everything. That's a reason that you won't be selected if you can't be responsive. Don't try and take more than you can deliver. If you can't deliver, you'll end up having problems with the prime. And, you know, it's a small community in design build. And so, unfortunately, the firms that don't do well and, you know, take on too much and the prime has to come in and do the work for them tend to not be able to get onto other design build projects. Get in and know who the procurement inclusion managers are. We're all ready and willing to talk to people. You know, when I get asked by a procurement team, hey, I've got XYZ package, who do you know that could deliver it? The first thing I do is go to my database that is developed by me, and I go searching for exactly those types of terms or the people that I know, so that I can provide that to the procurement team. You know, and then, you know, call, email, set up meetings. We'd rather actually see people and talk to you than get random bids from someone that we don't know. Okay, next slide. All right, so this is your time to ask questions, share your experience, ideas, hopes, wishes, dreams. All right, Catherine. So I worked on the beginning of the IAF project at the airport, Sound Transit Federal Way Link, and Washoe Tunnel. All design build issues I've seen, the contractor took more control over design tasks during construction, which led to design support people getting let go early. Owners have a hard time letting go. They're used to involvement instead of oversight, and change orders still exist. Yes, absolutely. All of that is true. And this is where having solid partnering does help, especially on transportation projects. The owner's involvement is extremely high, and we don't get to be as innovative as we do on a building project or a water wastewater project. Okay, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at this from a slightly different point of view. Is there an advantage to be had going in as a construction firm and design firm through a joint venture instead of bidding on one as a sub or prime and trying to do the partnership that way? Is one better than the other?
We very rarely see a joint venture between a contractor and a designer, and it's mostly because of the amount of risk. When you joint venture, you have to be jointly in several, you have to have joint and several liability, which means designers typically can't do that on a construction project. So there are firms that do both, but especially in the transportation world, that doesn't happen. So unless you're someone like AECOM who has a design and a construction arm, or a Parsons that has Parsons Transportation or Parsons Construction, those types of companies will, but they have different branches under the same parent company essentially.
They've probably already squared away all the liabilities and have that baked into the cake anyways.
Yeah.
All right,
much.
thank you.
Mhm. This is your open floor.
So while we're waiting, Danica, thank you for this presentation. I just wanted to remind everybody that the link to your presentation will be dropped in the chat here in a moment. But otherwise, I will have it. Oh, there it is. I should loaded it up there. Andrea loaded it up there. Anyway, and because it is a PDF file, all the links are clickable. So, and you have Danica's contact information if you need to reach out to her. So thank you, Danica.
Yeah. You know, and I will say with kind of piggybacking off of Andrew's comment about the infrastructure spending and knowing what's coming, there is a lot of design build coming in Washington State. There's a lot of design build and collaborative delivery coming across the country. For example, I'm living and breathing middle mile broadband right now because California is delivering all 10,000 miles of it under various CMGC contracts under an emergency order in order to get the federal spending by 2026 done. So there's a lot of this available. It's a really good time to get in and start really understanding this and getting into these design build projects. All right, benefits to design build over GCCM. That feels like a trick question. So GCCM is the same as CMGC. It's very similar to Construction Management at Risk, or CMAR. The biggest difference between design build and GCCM is who owns the design. So in the design build world, the contractor owns the design. In the GCCM world, the owner owns the design. It also, there's different risk profiles associated with both. In design build, because you are pricing your project when you're at a very low percentage of design being done, there's a higher amount of risk and typically a higher amount of contingency that goes into that base bid. In GCCM, you provide what are called opinions of probable construction cost, OPCCs, at typically 30, 60, and 90%. And then you as a contractor are working with the designer, working with the owner to do constructability, to do value engineering, to have innovation workshops, to provide schedule updates based on options that exist, to price out the project. And then you negotiate the project cost for construction when you're somewhere between 60 and 90% design. So it allows a different risk profile from that perspective, in that you can design out a lot of the risk before you have to price it. Does that answer your question, Catherine?
Well, it seems kind of quiet there. So,
Hey.
oh, hi, Con.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I just don't know how to frame this question because a lot of us here, Danica, we're small businesses, so or we're professional services, so we won't be able to go towards these bigger DB, design build, or even CMGCs, right? So we usually go under subs, or we, these scopes are too big for us. So, what's your suggestion for if we live in an ideal world, owners would force GCs to break up these scopes and then more smaller contracts or timing that we could go in and but that's not in an ideal world. So what's your suggestion for us to go in to get some of these crumbs?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this is part of why in Washington, when we have state funded jobs, we do have DB Eagles of some sort. And in federally funded jobs, there's always DB Eagles, right? So it does force the prime to meet those goals and to flow them down through all of their contracts. So that is a requirement of the contracting world. But to get some of those chunks, it's getting to know who are the primes that are getting involved from a design, from a construction, from a quality standpoint, and getting in and talking to them and making sure that they know that you're interested, making sure that they know you can deliver, what your resources are, what your capabilities are. Do you have a bench of people that can deliver? That's going to be the biggest thing. And I can tell you, for example, I'm the inclusion manager on the 405 Randy Bellevue project. We right now have 110 DBE firms of some sort on the project. So, and it's coming from both the construction side, the design side. Our quality group actually has a DBE under them. We've got first tier, second tier, and third tier subs that are at DBE. So there's a lot of opportunity, and a lot of it is just getting in and talking to those primes and understanding where they need help and how you can provide that value. Does that help?
Thank you. Well, that's the way it is right now, right? And I wonder, as a community, because the goal of this class is to, to crowdsource all of us small businesses to help GCs and to help the owners to perform better and more innovative in the future, as we're reimagining the way we contract or the way we execute projects, right? So I'm always looking for more proactive solutions versus, for a lot of us, subs are get in there and wait. I think that's just the way it is, and we're good at that, and we will continue to persist and persevere. But I wonder, given your position as a bridge between these agencies and small businesses, are there ways to motivate these owners to help us out? Like, take leadership in your power to pay for it. Make them, put these GCs, firms to work, so that way it works. Yeah.
I mean, and we do see design builds and GCCMs come out for smaller values. I think the smallest design builds I've seen have been in the range of $1 to $2 million in total fees. GCCMs, I've seen them as low as, I think, 2 to 3 million. I don't think I've seen them much lower than that. So there are smaller ones. The feedback from the contracting community, though, is that they're not worth it. You can't make enough money on the small ones. So, the best thing that you can do proactively, like I said, is go and talk to the primes and, start delivering with them on hard bid jobs so that you can do those design builds and they know that that's who they're going to call. So, Ron, you asked, what do I estimate the prime pool in Washington State is? From a contractor's standpoint, there's quite a few primes in Washington, to be completely honest. And if you go and look at who's submitting on these design builds and GCCMs, I can, on the transportation side, I can probably name at least 15 prime contractors that exist in Washington State. If you add in the water wastewater side, you're increasing that. And then when you are adding in the commercial, healthcare, school stuff, it goes up even more. So there's quite a few primes when it comes to the contracting side. On the engineering side, it is a smaller pool because with the size of the jobs, it typically does need to be a little bit larger firms. So, and it goes by region. You know, there's more primes on the west side of the state than the east side of the state right now, as far as design build and GCCM. But there's more work on this side of the state right now too, as far as design build and CMAR, GCCM, whatever you want to call it. Okay, and then there's another question. When is the best time to get involved with a prime when a design build project is posted? How early is too early? So if the project's already been posted, you're too late. If you are expecting to be in during the design development piece of this and working as part of the design build team to do those constructability reviews or do design work, you need to be looking at those look aheads and finding teams before the job's ever on the street. I can tell you that I have teams that form anywhere from 3 to 5 years before a project ever comes out to the contracting community. So. Okay.
And Leslie's muted and talking to herself, so I'll just say that's about it for time on Danica. If you have any extra questions, I dropped her email in chat there. You can go ahead and email her those questions. And then Leslie, you were about to say?
Well, I was just going to tell Danica how much we appreciate, you know, everything that she had to provide today, and remind everybody that, you know, all of these are available in the digital Dropbox. And so we'll take a little mini break here, and we'll queue up for Tina Eide from the city of Tacoma. And then following her will be city of Seattle after that. And then at the end, we'll have the Northwest Mountain Minority Manufacturer Supply Diversity Group. And
Northwest Mountain Minority Supplier Development Council. You almost got it that time.
Almost got it. Okay. All right. So again, thank you, Danica. And we'll let Tina queue up here. And Tina, if you have any files that you would like to share with the audience, please go ahead and just forward those on to me, and I'll put them in the digital drop. So thanks again, Danica.
Yes,
And
thank you.
welcome aboard, Tina.
Sorry, I was muted. Leslie, I think I sent you the files yesterday, but I'm not sure. But did you want me to share my screen or just sort of talk through them and people can look at them later?
Well, no, I do have them. So do you want me to run it and or do you want to run it yourself?
Either way.
Why don't we let you go ahead and queue it up and get started with it, and then I'll be your backup if something happens. I'll have it up on my machine at the same time.
All right. Let me share my screen. Give me a minute to pull it up. There we go. Okay. So it's a simple slideshow to show where to go to look for opportunities to contract with the city of Tacoma, and then I'm going to talk about some things that maybe aren't on the slideshow based on some of the comments I just heard. And let's see if I can pull my Zoom to my other screen so I can see if somebody has a question. Let me know if somebody has a question or jumps in with anything.
Will do.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I am a senior buyer here with the city of Tacoma. We're part of the procurement and payables division. So just quick website overview, talking about where you can find our bidding information, our submittal information, where to find those general contractors that you might want to reach out to if you're interested in a bid, and a little bit of information about how to reach our accounts payable. Go ahead to the next slide. So our website's at cityoftacoma.org, and where you can find the bidding information is under the government tab. There's also a direct link that will get you right to our bids, which is tacomapurchasing.org, and that's down below on the slide. It's also on a slide further on, but if you're navigating from the main page, you'll find it under government. Next slide. And then underneath the government, you'll find a list of all our city departments. Go ahead, next slide. Procurement and payables and all our purchasing bids are under our finance department. Next slide. And then there's procurement and payables. Next slide. And finally, under purchasing. So the short address, that's tacomapurchasing.org, would take you right to this page, the contracting opportunities. And next slide. And this is where you'll find our 4 main categories of bids and solicitations that we do. We have supplies, services, public work and improvement projects, and surplus. So go ahead and click on the next one. So to get into the specifications or to see the bid holders list, which will show you some of the contractors who are signed up, go ahead to the next slide. You would click on one of those 4 choices. For example, public works and improvements, and you'll see a list of our bids. One of the things I was going to point out is under the spec number, if it ends in an F, it's considered a formal bid. That's a sealed solicitation. Those are usually $500,000 and over. They can be less than that. A lot of our public works bids will go out as formal sealed solicitations even under that. But if you're looking at supplies or services, that's a good indicator of what size the bid is. Then under each of those, we have our specification. You can register for the bid holders list. And then if there's any questions or answers or addendums posted, you'll see those there. And each of those is a link that will get you to the spec, the bid holders list, and the questions and answers addendums. Go ahead to the next slide, please. So registering for the bid holders list is really important on these. If you find one that has a description you're interested in, or you open up a spec that you're interested in, because the bid holders list is what gets you the notifications when there's a question as an answer, or when there's an addendum posted to it. Can also be, addendums can change the submittal due date, which was listed on that first page, and I didn't point that out. But so this will take you into the bid holders list where you register for a specific project. Also, you can see all of the other people who have registered on the plan holders, bid holders list. And so we're talking about, finding who to partner with. That can give you an idea of who maybe some of the GCs, the general contractors, are on that, or some larger firms that may need to partner with parts of the specification. One thing, clicking on the specification too, when you open that up and get the PDF of the entire specification, one thing to look for is if you are an OMWBE firm, is right now we're focused on our public works and improvement projects, but we'll be expanding it to all of our bids. We have what's called equity and contracting goals. And so you may look at the specification and see that it has goals, percents for each of those. And that may give you an idea of reaching out. If you qualify under one of the OMWBE lists, you might then reach out to one of the contractors who are listed on the plan holder list to say, hey, have you partnered with a firm? Because those are requirements to be able to submit a proposal or bid for that project. Is to be considered responsive, the firm has to meet those equity and contracting goals. So it's something we're doing moving forward. Okay, go ahead and thank you. If you are responding to a bid or a proposal or a quotation that we have out there, go ahead to the next slide. One of the things to remember is the submittal requirements. There usually will be some sort of checklist or bidder's reminder page. And just a reminder that those are critical. You all know when you're submitting for bids, you have to make sure you've hit each of those to be considered responsive. Go ahead to the next slide, please. And the next slide. So our bid results page, which was underneath the types of solicitations we have, you'll see a bid results page. And it is a way to see, what the status is of the submittal. Go ahead to the next slide, please. And the next slide, they're listed by year. And then each bid will have its, spec number, what type it is, the description, and then it will say either final and who it's been awarded to, or it will say preliminary and under review. And that's just a way to check on the status of any solicitations out there. Go ahead for the next slide. Go ahead, head to the next slide. So just some quick things to remember as the breadcrumbs. So the original way that I showed you to get in there that has a lot of different links to click on. So if you're in here and you're looking at supply solicitations, you can always just use the back button, or you could go through the contracting, click on the contracting opportunities to get back to see maybe services or public works. Next slide, please. All of the pages are set up to be the same and similar. We've got sidebar links that will take you back to them where you need to go. And next slide. And then the City of Tacoma seal will always take you to the home page. And next slide, please. So after we put this all together, we realized that after we showed everybody how to go through government departments, finance, procurement, payables, there's also on the main page, there's a tab that says business. There's also the request for bids and proposals that'll take you quickly to our supplies and services and public works and improvements bids. Next slide, please. Once you're doing business with us, or if you have any questions about getting set up for the City of Tacoma, we do have accounts payable at cityoftacoma.org email address. That's a great way to get a hold of them. And then my contact information is on the last page. So if you have any questions at any time, feel free to reach out to me, or also bids at cityoftacoma.org is our general procurement email, and that way it can get routed. So we have a group of senior buyers, and we all work with different departments. So if you have a question that has to do with our warehouse or with our environmental services division, that might go to a different senior buyer than me. So I went through that kind of fast. Does anybody have any questions or anything else they'd like to know from this?
There's a question in the chat. You got that?
I see that. Thank you. So if we have something that is truly sole sourced, generally what happens is the department who's looking for that will go out and do the research to find out that that is available only through one source. So we don't have a list of sole source vendors, but when somebody goes out to look for something, usually it's a Google search or something on the web. We can do sole source for certain things. We've got pretty strict rules around them. And then what they usually do is reach out to the vendor and ask, can you provide a letter that shows you are the sole source for this? And then we have a whole waiver process it goes through. Yes, in general, we find out if you ever see a bid out there for something that you think you're a sole source at, all of our bid specifications will have contact information for the buyer for that project, and you can feel free to email them. But we do not have like a sole source roster for various things. You're welcome. Any other questions?
Well, it looks like last call. Thank you, Tina, for providing us some insight into procurement in the city of Tacoma. We appreciate all the links, and we have this available for all of our participants today. So
Thank you for
thank
running
you.
the slideshow, Leslie. I appreciate it. And I saw one comment about events coming up. On that main purchasing page where we list all of our bids, there is a general get notified when things get posted on that site. And that's a good place to register for things to find out what's coming up with the city. We don't have any events coming up right now that we know of. But thank you, Leslie.
All right,
Tina,
thank-
I actually have a last minute question. Thank you so much for presenting. I'm wondering, like, where does the city of Tacoma spend most of its contracting dollars? Like, what kind of projects?
You know, I don't really know the answer for that, but I could find out.
Yeah, I'm just curious, just like what kind of things do you purchase the most? I know for us, like we do a lot of construction, so there's that.
Right, and it's actually a little tough to do it by dollars in some ways because you know, the city has 5 dams. Sometimes those projects are very expensive. We have environmental services, we have, you know, fire and police. So, you know, going out and if you happen to hit a year when we're buying a whole bunch of new fire trucks, that can be very expensive, but it's really just one project. But or we have a lot of streets initiatives that have been funded lately. So a lot of money goes to that. So it's an interesting question. It kind of varies by year. And it just depends on, you know, if you're hitting this type of project or this type of project. But I can go ahead.
Yeah, which means it's even more important to like have some kind of relationship or like know when things are coming down the pike to be aware of what is, you know, becoming available or on the website, right?
So the website's a great place to register for the notifications, and we also advertise everything in the Daily Journal of Commerce.
Great. Thanks so
Or
much.
I'm sorry, the Tacoma Daily Index. Got that one backwards. The Tacoma Daily Index has the advertising for all of our goods that go out.
Got it. Thanks, Tina.
Good question. Thanks.
So thank you, Tina. And yeah, we appreciate the time and effort that, you know, the city of Tacoma and the city of Seattle has made to contribute to our event today. One thing of note, we have an upcoming networking event next Tuesday, and we have invited all of the presenters to attend this event. So, you know, if you're interested in meeting one-on-one or having a few small bites and maybe a refreshing drink, it would be a good time to make some connections. So thanks again, Tina. And I see Emily just posted the RSVP. If you have not already RSVP'd, you can do that easily. So with that, thanks, Tina. And I think if our team from City of Seattle is available, we have Presley Palmer and Krista Diaz. So how about it, guys? Are you ready to go?
We are ready to
We
go.
are.
So I just wanted to get on and introduce myself. I'm Presley Palmer. I'm the Deputy Division Director here in Purchasing and Contracting. So just want to make sure everyone knew who I was, and also just want to kind of just do a little thing about who we are part of. We're part of, it's now Facilities and Administrative Services. You may have heard it as Finance and Administrative Services. So there's a change there where finance is now their own entity, and now we're Facilities and Administrative Services. So that's our department name, and under that department umbrella, we're one of the 11 divisions under that umbrella, which is Purchasing and Contracting. So just want to introduce myself and also put that out there, just in case you may still see both names out there until we can get the legal part done throughout this whole process. And with that, I'll turn it over to Krista. She's actually going to go through all the little highlights of who we are, and then we'll both be here for our questions and answers.
Yeah, is everyone able to see my screen? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So as Presley mentioned, we are part of Facilities and Administrative Services. We're in the Purchasing and Contracting Division. So Presley is our Purchasing Manager and Deputy Division Director in Purchasing and Contracting. And I'm the Associate Purchasing Manager working under Presley. So our division is responsible for several things at the city, including centralized oversight of city departments and offices for purchasing. And when we talk about purchasing, we're talking about routine goods and services, consulting, and that's contracts for professional services, and that's decentralized at the city. So every city department manages their own consultant contracts and the consultant procurement process, and we provide oversight on what those policies and resources look like. And then our division also manages the construction and public works process. Presley and I are not part of that group, but it is within our division. So I'm mostly going to be talking about purchasing and consulting today. And then our division also manages our social equity program, which includes apprenticeships, our labor equity program, fair pay, including minimum wage and prevailing wage, and then our women and minority-owned business program, which we call WIMBYs. So I'll talk a little bit about how to just do business with the city and how to connect with us more to get started. So this PDF, which I've sent to Leslie, so hopefully Leslie can drop that in the chat for us. It has some important links that'll help you connect with us. So first, our website has some information on resources and doing business with the city. We do advertise all of our publicly advertised procurements in the Daily Journal of Commerce. So that is available online at djc.com, and I'll talk about other places that we advertise, but for anything that requires public advertisement, we always post in the Daily Journal of Commerce. And that would cover both things that we handle in purchasing, but also the consultant publicly advertised solicitations as well, which are run by our city departments. So really a great place to find more information is on our blog. It's called the Byline blog. We do post all of our purchasing solicitations there. So everything for routine goods and services would be posted on the Byline blog. And then we also post other engagement opportunities there as well. So as an example, our division staffs the Tabor 100 Hub on a weekly basis. So you can find information for who's scheduled to be there and when on the Byline. And then we also have information on our First Friday events there as well. So First Friday is basically a time for people to come and learn about doing business with the city. The next one is October 7th. So it is the first Friday of every month. And we do have different sessions. So there are concurrent sessions for purchasing, which is routine goods and services, consulting for professional services, and then public works or construction. And then in the afternoons on Friday, we do have a Spanish language event that covers all three of those types of opportunities to do business with the city and offered in Spanish. So I'll talk a little bit about purchasing first. So purchasing at the city is decentralized when it is under 58,000. So for purchasing of items or goods or services that are 10,000 or below, departments can do a direct selection of a vendor without doing a competitive solicitation. And I'll talk a little bit about how you can connect with departments as well in just a moment. And then for goods or services that are between $10,000 and under $58,000, departments can do what we would call an informal solicitation process, which is basically soliciting 3 quotes for the goods or services and then selecting the lowest quote. And then anything over 58,000 would come through our purchasing team for solicitation. So that would include one-time purchases of 58,000 or more, and also recurring purchases. We do establish blanket contracts that can be utilized for several years. We typically do about a 5-year process for blanket contracts. And we set those up through our solicitation methods of either an invitation to bid, which is where we will tell you what we're looking for, and then you tell us your quote, and we go with the lowest bidder on those. And then the other solicitation is a request for proposal. And that's where we're outlining really what the results we're looking for are. And then vendors would reply with how they're going to reach those results along with cost as well. So invitation to bid, we're just going with the lowest bidder. That is typically what we're doing in a lot of our routine goods and services. And then request for proposals, we're really looking at the both the qualifications for how a vendor would meet the deliverables that we're trying to achieve, and then also their plans to meet that. So that's where we would get we'd look beyond just cost, where in invitations to bid, we're really just looking at cost. So the business needs of the city really drive all of our procurement. So all of our requests for purchases would be driven by city departments. And our online business directory serves as kind of like a yellow pages. I know that's kind of an outdated reference, but for people who know what the yellow pages are, our online business directory is a place where businesses can sign up to basically be on a list of potential vendors for the city. So there's no type of vetting process or anything. It's really just a place where you can sign up to do business. You can indicate whether you're a woman or minority-owned business. And then city departments usually go to our online business directory first to look at who might be able to provide goods or services. So when they are looking at these $10,000 or less purchases, they'll often go to the online business directory to find businesses that could potentially provide the goods or services. And then when they're looking to do a 3-quote process or an informal process, they'll often solicit quotes from vendors that are signed up on our online business directory. And then our team in purchasing, when we are doing competitive solicitations, uses the online business directory to generate our bidders list. So when we do have solicitations to advertise, we post them on the Byline blog and advertise in the Daily Journal of Commerce. But we also will do an email blast out to businesses that are signed up for the types of services or goods that we're looking for in our online business directory. I would say that's the #1 most important thing in doing business with the city is registering in the online business directory, and then also ensuring that you've updated your contact information. I like to think about about doing that twice a year, like daylight savings time is a good time to do that, going in and making sure that you have your contact information updated. We get a lot of bounce backs when we are advertising to lists that we've pulled from the online business directory, because people have had staff move on from their businesses. So it's a good idea to check back a couple times a year to ensure that's up to date. And as I mentioned, all of our opportunities are advertised on the Byline blog for routine goods and services. And we also post our terms and conditions online as well. Those are not negotiable. So it's a good idea before you try to enter into a contract with the city, or before you reply to an invitation to bid or request for proposals, that you take a look at our terms and conditions, which we have online. So that's purchasing and purchasing of routine goods and services. And then for consulting, it's a little bit different. This, as I mentioned, is decentralized through the city department. So we do manage the policies and we provide templates around this. We serve as a resource for departments, but for the most part, departments are running their own consultant solicitation processes and managing their own contracts. So for consulting services, departments can directly select a consultant for scopes of work that are anticipated to be 58,000 or less. And then we do have a consultant roster, which departments are allowed to select a consultant from if the dollar threshold is between 58,000 and 343,000. So our consultant roster, you can sign up by going to our online business directory, which is what I was talking about before. And then once you complete registration in the online business directory, there are additional steps to apply for our consultant roster. And really, it's just an opportunity for you to tell us what types of services you provide. You can upload your resume there as well. And then departments can select off the consultant roster as long as it's under 343,000. And the roster is open to small businesses. It doesn't allow large businesses to register. And so anything that is over 343,000, or if the consultant roster is not utilized and the scope is above 58,000, departments would do a competitive solicitation. So you can find those opportunities advertised on the Consultant Connection. So it is specific to consultant services, and all opportunities that they have that are competitive opportunities would be posted there. And similar to purchasing and contracting, or in purchasing, we do have the consultant terms and conditions posted online as well. For the most part, those terms and conditions are non-negotiable, but they may vary by city department. There are some specific terms that a department could have that might be different than other departments, but for the most part, those are non-negotiable. And then what I can't really speak to is our public works process, but you can find more information on construction, contracting, or public works on our website. And all solicitations for public works or construction are posted on Procureware. So there is an update or a link here for where you can provide, or where you can find updates on construction projects. And because both consulting is decentralized and then purchasing of routine goods and services is really driven by the needs of city departments, it's a good idea for you to make connections with the different departments. So especially if you're a woman or minority owned business, we do have WIMBY advisors in each department. You can find a link of who those WIMBY advisors are on our website. And they're really investing in women and minority owned businesses. They're invested in helping their departments reach our aspirational goal for WIMBY spending, both in consulting and in the purchasing of routine goods and services. So connecting with WIMBY advisors, depending on the type of service you provide, is a really good way to start making connections, find out about opportunities, especially for opportunities that are below our solicitation thresholds for both purchasing and consulting. And then we do have a brand new public search portal on our website. This is the link, and all of our contracts at the city, from purchasing of routine goods and services to consulting to construction, are all now going to be on our new public search portal through our system Masterworks. So you can find that information here. I think it's a really good idea to go in. We have a great keyword search as part of that public search portal. And so you can go in and search by some keywords that are similar to the types of services or goods that you provide, and see what kind of contracts the city has. Because looking at existing contracts can really help you identify what the city's able to purchase and what types of professional services we're looking to engage in. So that's what I have. Are there any questions? I don't think I could see the chat. Let's see.
I did have one more thing just to add to that, Krista. What Krista just said, the last thing she said is about our contracts. We do have over 1,000 contracts, blanket contracts for recurring purchases. And it is always a good idea to look at those contracts if you're looking to do business, because typically what we're going to do is we're going to rebid those contracts. So that gives you an idea. And in those cases, you can always contact one of our staffs, whoever is associated or is one of our strategic advisors or our buyers who might be managing that contract. Definitely contact them to make sure that they can give you as much information on when we expect to rebid it, what is the opportunities as far as the way the contracts are established now. So that's kind of where you want to also be. So there's quite a few opportunities within our contracts to just reach out directly to us as opposed to the departments.
So Catherine is asking if you offer any IDIQ contracts.
IDIQ, what is that?
I can't remember the abbreviation. Indefinite on-call, indefinite delivery, I believe. Indefinite.
Oh, okay. On-call contracts. Yeah. So in both our consultant contracts, we do have some on-call opportunities for consultants. And I believe there might be some for public works as well, but I can't really speak to the public works process.
And she says, thank you. I would like to ask the question that I know is bubbling at the top of everyone's head, but they're afraid to ask. Are you guys going to be at Tukwila for the Tabor 100 event we're doing on Tuesday next week?
I think I've already answered my question. But I don't think we have plans. At least we here me and Krista don't have plans, but that doesn't mean someone else from our division that isn't planning on going. Typically, there might be someone from our division, whether it's our compliance team, Miguel, Carmen, or someone like that. So we don't know. We can definitely check and see and get back and let you know if no one's registered yet. I think you're taking registration. Is anybody from the city of Seattle registered yet, or are you not seeing that?
No, I have not seen anyone yet register from the city of Seattle.
Okay, we'll circle back with that and see. Maybe it's just not out there, because typically we do like to have some representation there. So we'll take a look.
I'll send you an email that you can share.
Cool, perfect.
Perfect. And we do also have a reverse vendor trade show coming up on December 8th. So that will be something that will be advertised on our Byline blog. So you can find information there, but it's an opportunity basically for you to come and connect with us and learn how to do business with the city. So December 8th, and it will be at Tabor. It will be both a in-person and virtual hybrid event.
And if any of you have attended our reverse vendor trade shows in the past, typically what we do is we invite other agencies to come in, set up a booth, and do similar to what we did with the regional contracting forum. This one's just going to be city departments. So it's all going to be all city departments that's going to be at the Tabor event for this one, unlike the ones, if you do remember, the ones at Seattle Center where we used to do those on an annual basis. So this will be slightly different.
And I see in the chat that someone asked about for non-construction businesses, such as doing t-shirts and customized items, that's where I'd really recommend that you register in our online business directory. Often those are the types of purchases that are below our bid thresholds. And so that's a really great opportunity to get your company outlined in our online business directory. Departments will go and look there directly when they're looking to make those purchases. And it's a great opportunity for our departments to utilize WIMBY vendors, women and minority owned businesses.
Well, thank you, Krista, and thank you, Presley, for adding to our conversation this afternoon. We appreciate your time and effort and being part of this advanced PortGen. You're kind of like the capstone group. It's been a phenomenal opportunity for us, and I'm really hoping that City of Seattle, City of Tacoma will be part of our networking event next Tuesday. So thank you so much. And with that, I hope that we'll see you next week. So thanks, Presley, and thanks, Krista.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one more presenter tonight. We have Fernando here, Fernando Martinez. He's from Northwest Mountain Minority Supplier Development Council, which is a mouthful. And I would hate to think, the conversations that went on when they were looking for a website address that people would remember. But anyway, Fernando is here, and if he's ready, I think we're ready to turn it over to him. So, Fernando, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Now, my name is Fernando Martinez, and I know I've got a deck, and I don't know if you have it there. Otherwise, I can share from my screen whatever is easiest for you guys, because I can drive from here as well. So, welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. My name is Fernando Martinez, and I work for the Northwest Mountain Minority Supplier Development Council. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization focused on the growth and development of ethnic minority businesses. We're multicultural in that we represent Blacks, Hispanics, Asians, Native Americans, and Alaska Natives. So our focus is in the growth and development of these businesses. And so we've been doing this in the Northwest since 1976. Our organization was founded here in Seattle in 1976. We became officially affiliated with the National Minority Supplier Development Council back in 1978. So we're a membership organization, and we actually work with the private sector as well as with the public sector. Krista, not Krista, but you need me to do anything on my side here, or?
We did just get your presentation, and if you are okay with it, I will pull it up.
Yes, please.
And okay, so give me a second here.
That's okay. And so what I'll do is I'm just going to kind of go over a few slides, because I have a slide that has about 10 slides, but given the time frame that we have here today, I'll probably just focus on about 5 of those slides. And really, it's about, what we're about is really about supplier diversity and defining what supplier diversity truly is. And so as we think about supplier diversity, it really is a process, a methodology, a practice of supplier inclusion. And what I mean by that is that it's about corporations and public agencies providing a fair and equitable opportunity for minority businesses, diverse businesses, to engage in contracting opportunities with the organization. The output of that is the positive effect of business growth, the positive effect of public agencies and corporations actually engaging in activities that support the growth of, the growth of our minority business, but more importantly, it's the effect that supplier diversity has on the community. So can I drive now?
No, you just tell me when to go next.
Okay, let's go to the next slide, and let's go to the next slide as well.
All right.
So one thing that there's 3 dimensions to diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's a dimension of workforce equity, there's dimension of philanthropic equity, and there's the dimension of supplier equity. And this is the place where supplier diversity fits. So for us, this is a very clear definition. I'm not going to go through this list, but supplier diversity is its own entity in the DEI sector. And in order for an organization to have a solid DEI practice, they must have those 3 dimensions: workforce, philanthropic, and supplier. And supplier diversity is not an affirmative action, it's a strategy. It's a procurement strategy that, if done correctly, can have significant effect across our communities. So the next slide, please. As we go into the next slide, what I'm trying to show you is we're going to go from the high ground to from the high to the low ground. From the low ground, we're going to go to aspirational. And this is what you see here in front of you right now is exactly what supplier diversity is designed to do. And so this project, I was working on this project a couple of years ago, and it was a $1.5 million construction project. And here's the effect of what you saw as a result of this inclusive process in supply chain procurement. So it was a $1.5 billion cost. The direct impact to our community was a $2.7 billion in extra economic effect. It affected 6,000 jobs, and it contributed $373 million to labor, wages. Now, on top of that, we also measure indirect output, which is like the secondary output, and then we measure the indirect output. So in addition to the $2.7 billion that it added directly to it, we added another $3.7 billion in indirect output. And we added another 13,000 jobs to our community. So when we look at this, we see that the effect of supplier diversity done correctly can have a significant impact upon our community. So when we think about adding $687 million in labor and wages to our community, that's very, very significant. Next slide, please. So, you know, as I mentioned at the beginning, even though we're headquartered here in Seattle, we represent a region. So the Northwest region is part of our territory. And that's what I meant when I say we're going from the ground, which is the example that I just gave you, to the aspirational. And the aspirational for us is about creating parity within our community, parity within our supply chain, parity within everything that we do, because the demographics are changing significantly. And right now in our region alone, the minority businesses that we support generate about $8.9 billion in annual revenues. By leveling everybody up to that level of parity where our businesses represent our communities and our populations, we can triple that and bring it up to 27 billion. So we go to the next slide, please, and then the next slide after this. There we go. So here's an astonishing fact. And the fact is that in our region, there's $3.4 trillion in business. The minority businesses in our region that we support only affect 0.25% of that. So that's how small the spend is with minority businesses in our region. Because even though we generate, you know, close to $9 billion in revenues, it's only 0.25% of what's out there in the marketplace. And you can see here the spread, right? And these are all numbers that that we've been able to acquire from census and from various research positions. So you can see that supplier diversity is very, very important. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, minority businesses hire more people of color. Minority businesses also hire majority individuals. So 50% of our employees are ethnic minority and 50% are less. 25% minority businesses hire 25% more people of color than non-minorities. For every dollar spent that a corporation or public agency spends with a minority business, it generates an additional $1.80. So that's the effect that you saw in that first example that I gave. As we look at this, and we just do some calculations, and we assume that every business is generating a 20% profit margin and net income. If we take that 9 billion and we subtract that 20%, we bring it down to $7.2 billion in revenues. But what it does is it generates another 13 billion in economic effect, and it supports an additional 34,000 jobs. This is what supplier diversity does, and this is what we do every day. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the overall parity, and this is where we get into the aspirational aspect of it. In our region, and we've got this broken down by state, so if anybody has any questions about state, I can answer those questions. But in the Northwest Mountain region, 31.8% of our community is diverse. But yet, we only have 7.4% of market share overall, 0.26% of the overall market in the region. So that 24% gap between our population and what we represent as minorities is very, very, very significant. So we go to the next slide. I'll demonstrate a little bit more about that. Here's what the new America would look like if everybody focused on leveling up and creating parity in this country. Right now, if you look at the chart on the left side, you see what status quo is. 92.3% of the business goes to majority-owned firms, which means that less than 8% is going to people of color. And you can see the numbers, and you can see like the revenues in terms of what current state is right now, and you can see the market share. If over the next couple of generations, and before we hit that tipping point where the minority becomes a majority in 2043, 2045, if we were to level up and make sure that our businesses are reflective of our community, these are the numbers that it would look like. Majority businesses would lose some revenue, but all minority businesses would gain some revenue at varying stages. But this is what it takes, ladies and gentlemen, for us to get to where we need to be in order to be an equitable economy. And so if you can imagine what, the African Americans could do with $3 trillion or $3 billion in revenues versus 258 million. If the Native Americans could, and the Native Americans are doing very well, and I'll tell you why, because they have figured out the 8A programming, and they know how to utilize that in terms of government contracting. And so if all of us take a page out of that playbook and learn how to leverage that government contracting, that 8A contracting, everybody can thrive. Because after all, supplier diversity was designed by the US government in order to eliminate discrimination in supply chain. So if we go to the next slide, and again, this is aspirational. Looking at parity is aspirational for us, but this is what we do every day. In order for us to really rid ourselves of the prejudices that exist in the world, we have to really become an equitable business and economy. And as you see here, there's three factors that we look at. We look at community development, we look at minority business development, and we look at member and public agency development. And as you kind of can look through these various segments of what it tastes like, education is the common thread around every one of these aspects. If we educate our children, if we position them to where they are the decision makers, we can achieve heights that we haven't achieved in the next 20 years. The important piece here, ladies and gentlemen, is that we have to think about moving from creating generational poverty into creating generational wealth. And that's what our organization is about, ladies and gentlemen. And with that said, like I said, you know, I only want to focus on a couple of slides, but I want to open it up to discussion. So next slide, please. So I'm like here for you. I'm here to answer any questions. I'm here to clarify anything that I just spoke about. So please, I open it up, and we can downsize the slide deck so we can look at each other as we're asking questions or not. And if there's no questions, there's no questions. I understand.
I have no shortage of questions, so if nobody else has, I'm just going to burn the next 15 minutes of your time. So
Please.
I begin with the structural problem of being a regional agency at SBTRC. We cover Idaho, Alaska, Montana, Oregon, and Washington. And I'm curious, what do those numbers and disparity look like when you start including Alaska? The minority population there is probably a little more indigenous. Then you get to Montana and all the numbers drop like a rock. Oregon and Washington are fairly diverse. Idaho, the numbers shift a bit. And I'm just curious, does that seem to hold like a trend line across the region? Are they fairly similar? And I'm exaggerating in my head, or is it drastic?
No, I think that where there's critical mass of communities, right? So for example, Oregon is very different than Washington. And the trend is, it trends the same way in each state, right? So, the difference between Alaska and Alaska Natives is, like I said, they've got the 8A game figured out. Native Americans have the 8A game figured out. So their revenues are pretty significantly high because they've built this model to where they can continue to grow within that environment. The numbers if we were to look at the state of Washington, right? If we were to look at the state of Washington itself, let me just pull up this number here real quick, because I have all this right in front of me. If we were to look at the state of Washington and we were to grow our businesses in the state of Washington by 20,000 jobs, it would grow our incomes significantly. It would grow our incomes like to 169 million in terms of minority revenues. I mean, that's pretty significant, right? I mean, that's like it would increase us to like 2 million employees. So the numbers are very, very significant, and they just go the same way, except they're smaller, right? In terms of ratio, Alaska population, you know, the city of Seattle has just about as many people as the state of Alaska has, right? So it all is very, very relative. Now we cover the states that you've just mentioned, Andrew, and we also cover Utah and Wyoming. So that's from a regional perspective. Wyoming is a place where very little minority business exists, but it's a very, very friendly state for people to incorporate in. And that's why a lot of companies from California, from the surrounding regions, incorporate in Wyoming, because for tax benefits, it's very, very friendly. It's kind of like the Delaware of the West Coast.
Oh, okay. And then I've got one just came in from Mark Schaefer. I'll keep all mine in queue on the back end if it gets slow. But Mark Schaefer says, thank you, Fernando. Lots of ways to look at the past. This is great going forward. 8A is just one area. What are your thoughts for teaming and partnering to reach these diversity, equity, and inclusion goals?
I think so teaming and partnering, I think is one of the best ways that we can do this, right? For example, in our work that we do every day, we hire MBs to be our partners, right? We have strategic partnerships with minority businesses or with our corporate members. So we team up in order for us to be able to deliver services. I think that one, there's the dimension of teaming, but two, there's a dimension of the corporate member of the public agency factoring that into play so that they can really carve out a component of it, right? And what I mean by that, say for example, we're building a complex here in Seattle. And you know, I positioned this a couple of years ago to some people, and they just didn't want to have it. I said, look, you know, you're building four buildings here. Give us one building of the four. We will construct it with all minority businesses. And I guarantee you that we will come in on time and budget, and we'll probably outperform everybody else. And you know, I had the team already selected, and they were all like in agreement. But the desire to segment, to break it into 3+1 was not there. And so teaming is very, very important, but we have to make sure that the people that are actually designing the contracts are willing to do that breakout and that carve out so that then everybody else can compete. Because if we had 25% of that business, it was going to be significant for our minority businesses, our minority contractors. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question?
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much. I guess some of the challenges in reading the contracts, they don't list it as such, exactly what you're saying. And so it's not necessarily that they, you know, the minority businesses can't do it, but it's not structured such that, you know, they encourage the large businesses to partner or team, and it's seen as like an afterthought or a nice to have, or, you know, to meet the goals that are there. But it would be nice to see that written into the contracts more.
Mm-hmm. And I think some of the bigger contracts some of the bigger construction companies have the appetite to partner with small minority businesses, with the small minority business leading, right? Some of them have that appetite. And recently I saw one, I'm talking about within the last couple of weeks, I can't remember who the main firm was, but they were interested in like, hey, we'll take the back seat if you lead for us. And I thought this is perfect, right? So absolutely.
Then we got another one in here from Brenda Rosender. And point Mark made without me asking is, you know, you could liven up your mic and chime in and correct me to respond to Fernando if you'd like, Brenda. The question is, how long is the typical certification application to the approval process? Also, how much does membership cost?
So, so we're kind of a little bit, there's several certifications, right? So I want to make sure that we don't confuse the two, right? There's OMWBE, which we support, we collaborate with OMWBE quite extensively. And then there's our certification. OMWBE is certification that is really required for state work and for public work. And that City of Seattle has their own certification, Port, Sound Transit, King County have their own certification. And our certification is more for the private sector. So we look at the certification from three classes. Businesses that are under $1 million, it costs $350 a year. Businesses that are between $1 million and $10 million, it costs $550 a year. Businesses that are between 10 and 50 million, it costs $750, and then businesses over 50 million cost $900 a year. So those are our cost structures. For us, our average time for us to complete the certification, once we receive the full packet, it's about 35 days. So once we get the application, it's complete, it's about 35 days. And the reason it's 35 days, and sometimes it's sooner, because depending on where you fall in terms of when the board is meeting, because every application has to be approved by the board of directors. The certification manager makes a recommendation that we need to approve Andrew Miller as an MBE. And then the board looks at that and asks any questions, and then we validate, and then we approve it. So depending, if you come in right at the end of the board meeting, it may take you 30 days, it may take you 35 days. If you come in right, you know, a couple of weeks before and you get everything complete, it may happen less than that. But our average is about 35 days.
Hi, Fernando. It's so good to see you.
Hi, Emily.
Thanks for presenting. Just a little bit of context. We've got our advanced PortGen workshop, which we're wrapping up here, but Fernando and the council is actually helping us, helping lead the Port's Business Accelerator Mentorship Program, which is kind of, if this is the 201 course, then that Business Accelerator Mentorship Program is a 301 course. But for this right now, my question is, could you talk a little bit more about what the benefits are for being a part of the council and why one might want to join?
Absolutely, Emily. Thank you for asking that question. You know, there's several things that and can I use a sports metaphor? Does everybody like baseball? Or, you know, sure. I love baseball, right? I love baseball, and so I use a sports metaphor in terms of certification and the benefits that come along with it. So if you're sitting outside a T-Mobile field and you're waiting for that home run to come out of the park, you're kind of probably going to be there for 1,000 bats before anybody blows it out of the park, right? When you go through the certification process, which is something that people have to really want to do, because, you know, we look for financials, we look for proof of ownership, we look for bank statements, simply because that's how we validate whether this company is truly ethnic minority owned, right? So if you certify, now you're inside a T-Mobile park. But once certification is there, then you have to participate. You have to participate in the networking sessions. You have to participate in the events, because the corporate members and the public agencies are looking to connect with the individuals that are certified with our council. It's a certification that is known across the country. And so if you're certified here in Seattle, you're certified in Miami, Florida. If you're certified if you're certified in New York City, you're certified in San Diego. So the benefits of our certification is that it's a national certification. The benefits of our certification is that it opens up the door for you to participate and engage with all of our corporate members across the country, as well as our public agencies. But most of the other value that comes is in our regional members. For example, the Port of Seattle is one of our regional members. Participating with us helps you engage with the Port of Seattle. Participating with us helps you engage with Puget Sound Energy, some of the regional councils. So it's that connectivity that the council brings, and that's one of the key benefits of joining our council through certification. The other benefit is that we have 4 core pillars under which we operate: certify, develop, connect, and advocate. And so when we certify, then the process begins of where's your development needed? And we can help with that development, because we offer programming, we offer courses, we offer support, we offer the assistance that you may need in specific areas. If you need support in designing your marketing collateral, we offer that support. If you need support in looking at some RFPs and thinking like, is this the right piece for me? Yes. If you need to bounce an idea across with something on a deal that you're looking at, this is where we come in. So from a development perspective, we're here. From a connectivity perspective, that's why I mentioned the connectivity. But here's the other piece that's very, very important: the advocacy. I've been involved in several instances over the years where we've had to advocate for our minority businesses in situations were not healthy. And I have to tell you that that's one of the key things that from a minority business perspective, leveraging our ability to advocate and speak on your behalf in some instances can be very, very valuable. So those are some of the benefits, Emily, that people can think about. You're welcome. Thank you. I read your lips because you were on mute.
So I have one more that I want to make sure I ask, unless we got another pops up. We do. Brenda Rosender, are there additional fees for advocacy or other development services, or is it all included in membership?
You know, if there's something that we have to do outside of our norm, there may be some fees. But for example, you know, we've got access to about 175 online courses for government contracting, right? And so that's part of it, right? So if it's outside the norm, we may just kind of like say like, hey, you need to meet with this person and then you guys make arrangements. But if it's within our scope of everything that we do, which is very rare that we're not doing it, because after all, when we think about leveling the play field and really kind of generating economic empowerment of our communities, because through that process, we gain political power as well, and we gain decision-making power. Now, that's why we're helping people develop, so we can get closer to that mark. So, Andrew, one more last question, I think.
Yes.
I'll go ahead and give a slide.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Sorry. So if you do, I actually have a situation where I'm a member, I'm an MBE, and I have a situation where I think only our organization can help me. Who specifically do I reach out to?
So, you know, if you start off with HUDA, that's our starting point, right? And then from there, we kind of like, we just take it wherever we just take it.
Okay. I'll do that. I'll reach out to her. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. My pleasure.
See, his was so quick, I can still ask mine. Just
Please.
the quick, we've got about a minute left. If you could give me the 30,000-mile flyby, what plans do you have to take advantage of the infrastructure bill that's been passed and the billions of dollars that are floating through the economy right now?
You know, we tried to take advantage of the first bill that was passed back by President Obama. And so what we found was that we need to partner with agencies like state of Washington, the port. I'm not sure how much the port is getting out of this, but we need to partner with these agencies so that we can actually take advantage of that. Because for us, we're an organization that nobody pays attention to us, right? I mean, even though we're a very successful organization, we've been around for 44 years. But from a funding perspective, any sort of grants or anything that we can take advantage of, we'll take advantage of. If there's money that Department of Commerce is going to send out because they're offering grants of that, we'll look at those grants. And specifically, you know, when I think about small businesses, especially in the construction arena, you know, I think that there's an opportunity for us to help them on the back end of the work and let them go out there and construct. Let us help drive the back end, the reporting, the consolidation, the accounting, and so that we can give them more time. And then that way they can either be business development or building the next building. So for us, I would love to see if I could get some money to support building a model where we could have construction companies subscribe to the back office services so that they can be in front and business developing more. If we can give them back 40% of their time that they spend on administrative stuff, and it's proven that when people say, I'm going to save you 40%, I'm going to make you 40% more efficiency, you know, all consultants will tell you that only about 50% of that can be actually validated. So if I can save you 40%, I commit that you'll probably gain 20%, half of that, so you can business develop or improve your business. So if we can help you save 40% of your time in administrative work, And that sets you up for adding an additional 20% to your business development or to your bidding or to your RFP responses and grow that way. There's nothing better than that, right? So infrastructure is out there. We just have to figure out where to get our hands on it.
Well, just to go with that, hand in hand, I just got back from a meeting in DC. There was actually a small business summit we held up there, and then we had a staff meeting the day after for all the SBTRCs, and they are pushing really hard. The number one priority is DBEs across the board. Of all the conversations, memorandums of understanding that were signed, handshaking that was done, and everything else, the answer is figure out how to bring up those numbers, make equity look visible on the spreadsheets. And they're actually building a dashboard at DOT that will do a diversity in procurement layout that's live with every purchase, every dollar spent. They can track by Native American or Hispanic or African American, and they can just go through and look at every purchase, look at all the dollars, and then they're just going to keep sliding the numbers until we get closer to that proper equity in the final outcomes. So feel reassured, they're trying.
Well, Andrew, but the caution that I see inside of that is this, is that you hire a Latino electrical company in Seattle, and that's the only Latino electrical company that's hired, right? So what about the African-American electricians? What about the Native American electricians? Because they're big enough to where they can take on those contracts. They're big enough to where people feel comfortable. So everybody kind of is attracted to those firms that are of size and scale already, right? And then the smaller ones that need the spend are kind of like, but by the way, we look good, right? Because we spent an additional $200 million with the firm, right? So, so that's my only cautionary tale with that effort, because it's great that it's on the dashboard, but unless we drive specific efforts, and this is what equity is about, right? Equity is about outputs and outcomes. It's about methodology that gets you to outputs and outcomes, and so if that dashboard reads pretty and it looks great, but it's only 5 people that got all the money, so that's my cautionary side to it.
That's why I like you. You think these things through. Worth a note, the reason they dragged all of us regional project directors up to DC was specifically to tell us to make dang sure that we are doing everything we can for every small business that applies under these categories, because realistically speaking, if it looks the same as the pie you put up on the left side, they're going to look bad and they might lose an election. Maybe there's some motive there. But when it comes to me, I have a certain set of numbers and I'll chase those. And I don't particularly care about how they look. What I know is the people who need help versus the ones that don't. And I'm trying to focus on the ones that need the help. And so I'll be forwarding people to you as well as the PTAC and SBA. A lot of that this week.
No, I mean, it's our pleasure to help you, and we have to think about, again, for years and years and years, we've focused on creating generational wealth, but now it's time for us to really step into it and really make it happen, right? Because it's going to be generations before we get to that point to where we can really have an effect where everybody has a fair say in what happens in this country, right? So, but anyhow, I don't want to get too political because I don't know who's in the audience.
After that week in DC, I can tell you there's a whole layer to it, but I believe Leslie's going to take over and we're about to wrap up shop. So thank you for staying late with us. As always, an amazing presentation. And I got to get your email address in chat so people can send you further questions later.
I'll put it in the chat.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, well, thank you, Fernando. This was enlightening to say the least. I don't know about the rest of the audience, but I have a lot more questions for you that I'd kind of like to, keep a thread of conversation going on in regards to not just Western Washington, but Eastern Washington, the demographics over here and the possibilities and before I was the Olympic PTAC, I was Eastern Washington PTAC.
Mm,
And, you know, our numbers are diverse, but they're, you know, they're not capitalized on at all. So
mhm.
I have your number, so we'll be in touch, but.
Absolutely. Thank you, Leslie. Appreciate the invitation. Emily, I appreciate the invitation. Thank you so much.
Well, and thank you to everybody that came today. And Emily, Port of Seattle, Tiffany from Washington PTAC, she's the program manager for Washington PTAC. And you know, it's been an outstanding series of workshops. And you know, we're thrilled to be part of this. Thank you, Andrew and Aisha for Northwest SBTRC. And if, you know, if anybody has any questions, please contact us directly. And hopefully we'll see you next week. So thank you, Fernando. And Emily, do you have any closing words?
No, just thank you again, Leslie, Aisha, and Andrew, and thank you, Fernando, for coming to present today. I couldn't be happier with the amazing turnout that we've had with each of our sessions, and we've gotten consistently good feedback. We would love to get more feedback from you if there are any ideas on how we could improve or things that you especially liked. Please shoot me an email and I'll drop that into the chat right now. Leslie, if you could drop yours there as well. Another thing we would love to hear from you is, yeah, we'll have surveys that we'll be sending out. So please be on the lookout for that, so we can make this even more valuable going forward.
I threw mine in too, just because